I know we have the pictures, but.
Part of the plea bargain. That he would get his haircut shorter in this environment, so. He doesn't look bad long hair, it's just.
No, it's just long hair. So my brother has long hair, and I wish he didn't, because he didn't grow it out right. So it just, I wish he would start over, like, he'd grow it out so it's healthy.
Well, he's always said, he said, Sal, are you ready for the long hair? He said,
Wasn't
"Hell
it bad?
no."
Was it- it was not you with this-
Yes, we have now switched, we've switched roles.
Switch home.
Yes, it's still the Dennis and Julie show, but now I'm leading and he's singing instead of the other way around, yes.
It's the same, two people, you just switched roles.
Yes.
That's right.
Was the rabbi here last week?
Yes, he was. Ooh, yes. Who that be? Diana.
Yes.
He didn't have it, but.
Shabbat shalom, Ina. All right, Shabbat shalom. So you can tell that I am not Rabbi Murray. He is not here this week. And if you were here 2 weeks ago, Dennis was here and I was there. So it's still Dennis and Julie, but we have swapped roles.
Saturday Night Live is next.
Yes. So I'm going to start with a reading that is not in your prayer book. One of the most effective instruments for preserving Jewish consciousness is public worship. The service of the synagogue is more than an expression of the needs and emotions of the individual worshipers who take part in it. It is also an expression of the joys and sorrows, the hopes and ideals of the house of Israel. The synagogue is the unfailing wellspring of Jewish feeling. Here, as we pray together, we become participants in the common sentiment, the collective conscience of our people. We become members of a far greater congregation than that of which we form a physical part. We join our brethren in spirit all over the world in their homage to the God of our people. Thus, our worship acquires a deeper fervor, a heightened dignity, and our attachment to the house of Israel is thereby strengthened.
And composed by whom?
Composed by Morris Joseph, and from Likrat Shabbat Prayer Book. And we continue with the blessing of the Shabbat candles. Rochelle.
As these Shabbat lights give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter the sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
And I forgot to welcome everybody who is also, both those who came here to the temple tonight and those who are joining us on YouTube. And we are going to continue on page 11 with a song that Dennis and I both like very much, and we sang it as the final song 2 weeks ago, and not very many people, I don't think, knew it. So we're going to keep singing it until people learn it, because Dennis and I both like this one. We're going to do Ki Eshmera Shabbat on page 11, second one up from the bottom.
And as my drill sergeant used to say, and you will keep doing it until you get it right. Yeah. Okay. This is a beautiful lead-in from what the introduction to the candle lightings did. You know, a sense of continuity, a sense of tradition. So, Ki Eshmerat Shabbat, okay. So what's this all about? The Sabbath has not kept Israel. Oh, yes, it has. That's what it's all about. So that's page, what's
11.
11, thank you. Ki Eshmerat Shabbat el Ishmereini. Ki Eshmerat Shabbat el Ishmereini. Oti le'od beino uveini. Oti le'od me'ad beino uveini. When I keep Shabbat, God watches, Shomer, over me. It is a sign forever between God and me.
And we continue on page 12 with L'chu Ranana.
L'chu neranena, l'chu neranena, l'chu neranena, Adonai. L'chu neranena, l'chu neranena, l'chu neranena, Adonai. Naria, naria, l'tzur ishenu, nikadem afanav. Naria, naria, l'tzur ishenu, nikadem afanav. L'chu neranena, l'chu neranena, l'chu neranena, Adonai. L'chu neranena, l'chu neranena, l'chu neranena, Adonai.
We turn now to page 20, and we're going to do L'chadodi, and we are going to do something different than we normally do. We're going to do 1, 2, 5, and 9. So when we get to the third verse, don't stand up yet. We're standing up on the fourth verse. And when we get to the fourth verse, we're going to stay standing, and we will go right into Hatzi Kaddish. So L'chadodi on page 20.
A little bit of folklore before we get started here. If you look at the lyrics on page 21 to verse 5. Awake, awake, your light has come. Arise, shine, awake and sing. The eternal's glory dawns on you. Think of living in the shtetl. You're tired. You've had a heck of a week. As Tevi would say, I've had a bad week. And so why should I suffer, says the beggar. My point is that this is trying to wake up the congregation. So as you go through the lyrics of L'chadodi, this all makes sense. So let's continue. L'chadodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nikabela. L'chadodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nikabela. Shamu v'zachor b'dibur echad, hishmi'anu el hamyuchad. Adonai echad u'shmo echad, v'shemo tiferet v'litila. L'chadodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nikabela. לקראת שבת לכוון אלך, כי מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי בעורק קומי אורי, 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 שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
Please rise and face the door symbolically to welcome the Sabbath bride. Verse 9.
בואי בשלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
And remain standing, and we continue on page 26. With that ends the first part of the service, the Kabbalat Shabbat, and this leads into the main section, the Hatzi Kaddish on page 26.
It's a placeholder, the Hatzi Kaddish. Yit Gadal V'Yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Lama Dirachu Teviam Lik Malchutei
Chayechonu Yomecha Uchayei Dechol Beit Yisrael Bagala Bagala Ubizman Kariv V'Yimaru Amen.
Yehi Shmei
Rabbah Mevorach Le'olam Lo Me'amaya Yitbarach.
Yitbarak V'Yishtabak V'Yipar V'Yitramam V'Yitnaseh V'Yitadar V'Yitaleh V'Yitalal Shmei Kudusha
Barechu
Leila Min Kol Berchata V'Shirata
Tushbechata Lenechemata Damihiran V'Yalma V'Yimaru.
Amen.
And we continue with the Borchu on the call to worship on page 28.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
And you can be seated, please. And we'll continue together on the top of page 31. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars, creator of the tide of time and light. You guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai Hama'ariv Aravim. And we continue on the next page, on page 32, with Ahavat Olam, about God's love.
We have acknowledged God's sovereignty over the universe, creation, day and night. And now we're saying that we appreciate it with love. Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael, Amcha Ahavata, Amcha Ahavata, Torah u'mitzvot u'kim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu, v'shachvenu u'kumeinu, nasiach bechukecha, v'nizmach v'divrei Toratecha, u'mitzvotecha li'olam va'ed, ki hem chayenu v'yorech yameinu, uvachem negei olam v'layla, v'yahavtal tasir mimenu li'olamim.
Baruch atah Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael. And I'm going to continue at the very, very bottom in the little letters on the next page. Torah is what God has revealed to us and what we discern of God. Ideas and ideals, laws and mitzvot are religious heritage. It unfolds our memories of Abraham and Sarah, of Moses and Miriam and the prophets. It is legislation and explanation, allowing questions that challenge, answers that inspire, all a quest for meaning. It is our way of life, a path for our souls, and a design for a better world. So remember the part about mitzvot and legislation to when I get to the Devar Torah. All who are able, please rise for the Shema on page 34.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad
Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Please be seated. And we continue on page 36 with the V'ahavta.
V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha
V'chol levacha v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha
v'hayu hadvarim ha'eleh asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Vishinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'aderech u'shaktecha u'kumecha u'kshartom le'od al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha U'tavtam al mizuzot beitecha u'bisharecha leman tiskaru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kidoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim V'hiyot lachem le'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem Emet. And once again, I apologize to people who need readers and don't have them on. I'm going to read in the small text again at the bottom of page 37. When people come to you for help, do not turn them off with pious words saying, "Have faith and take your troubles to God." Act instead as if there were no God, as if there were only one person in all the world who could help, only yourself. And we continue together at the top of page 39. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there's a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. And we continue on page 40 with Mi Chamocha. Trying to decide which one everybody would know.
You want the Lila Lies, don't you? You want
No,
the...
I don't mind. I
Oh.
just like singing them.
Oh, okay.
Mi
Mocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nehedar b'kodesh. Nora tehilot osefele, Nora tehilot osefele. Malchutecha ra'u vanecha, bokei hayam, lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, Zelianu v'yamaru, Adonai imloch, Adonai imloch, le'olam va'ed.
V'ne'emar ki farad et Adonai et Yaakov, u'galoma yad chazak mimenu.
Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. And we continue together at the top of page 43. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, hapurei sukkot shalom, aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim. And we continue on page 44 with Yismachu.
Okay, we've talked about Shabbat being a covenant between us as individuals, us and the Jewish people, with God. But it also, we get something back in turn. It's not just a one-way street, and that's what Yismachu is about. Yismachu
Malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Oneh Shabbat. Yismachu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Oneh Shabbat. Mikadashei, Mikadashei Shavi Shabbat. Kulam Yisba'u V'yitanu B'tubecha Shabbat. Yismechu V'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat V'korei, Oneh Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Oneh Shabbat. V'hashvi ratzita bo v'kdashto Shabbat. Chemdat yamim, O Torata Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Oneh Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Oneh Shabbat. Zecher l'ma'aseh, Lema'aseh Bereshit Shabbat. Zecher Lema'aseh, Lema'aseh Bereshit Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Oneh Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Oneh Shabbat.
When you look at the very last word, Zecher Lema'aseh Bereshit Shabbat. So Zecher, remembrance. So remember, Lema'aseh, the making, Bereshit, creation.
Pray as if everything depended on God. Act as if everything depended on you. And we rise on page 46 for the tefillah.
Adonai sifatai tiftachu fi tehillah. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avoteinu v'Imoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanoah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol,
וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל התורה והושיע, מוריד הטל, מכפל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדום מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Please be seated. And we will continue at the top of page 57 together. Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer, wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored, in all lands. You are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha be'irah na'avod. We continue on page 59. When we behold your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and stars that you set in place, and all that lightning last night as well, if you saw that, it was pretty amazing. What are we humans that you are mindful of us? We mortals that you take note of us. You made us little less than divine, adorned us with glory and majesty. You gave us dominion over your handiwork, laying the world at our feet. How majestic is your name throughout the earth. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha ne'eh lehodot. And we're going to do something a little bit different this week. Instead of doing Shalom Rav, we are going to do Lo Yisagoy on page 61.
Lo yisagoy goy
Oh, we're on the second verse.
heret.
Lo yisagoy el goy cherev, lo yimadu od milchama. Lo yisagoy el goy cherev, lo yimadu od milchama. Lo yisagoy el goy cherev, lo yimadu od milchama. Lo yisagoy el goy cherev, lo yimadu od milchama. That's nation shall not lift up sword against nation, they shall never again know war. And let's read together right underneath that. Don't stop after beating the swords into plowshares, don't stop. Go on beating and make musical instruments out of them. Whoever wants to make war again will first have to turn them into plowshares first. And we will now pause for a moment of silent meditation, the prayers of your heart, or one of the prayers from the next page in the book.
say shalom in Ramah. Hu yaseh
Imru, amen. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu v'al Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. And we continue on page 253 with our prayer for healing. God, who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, send your blessing to the following friends and family members who are in need of healing and comfort: Diane Levy, Jay Kaler, John Myers, Martha Schneider, Arlene Sandelstein, Sydney Scrementi, David Lipsitz, Sandra French, Suzanne Winterberger, Evelyn Carpenter, Fred Solomon, Merv Weinman, Janice Zellers, Serrano Dano, Ruby Mattis, Lyle Jackson, Mark Rosen. If you're joining us on YouTube and you have a name you'd like to add it into the chat box. And if you're here at Temple, please say the name aloud as I go around the room. All right, and we will sing in the middle of page 253, the prayer for healing.
The Friedman Mishnah Barak, as I go through congregations, and it's not just in Reform Judaism anymore. We find it in conservative congregations, certainly at B'nai Yeshurun in Cleveland, or Park, where I sometimes find myself. They belt it out. It's not meant to be belted. It's meant to be a very quiet, plaintive sort of thing. Misheberach
Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach Imotenu Mikor HaBracha Li'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with Refuah Shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. This week's Torah portion is Ki Tetze, when you go out. It's from Deuteronomy 21:10 through 29:19. And this portion contains 74 commandments. Many of them have to do with how we should live as a community and treat those around us. So you might have noticed that I did an awful lot of readings about how to live in community and treat those around us, and that's the reason why I wanted to sort of set the stage for the Torah portion. So when you have 74 commandments, some of which make a lot of sense, some of which in this day and age don't make a lot of sense, it's sort of hard to pick and choose. So I'm going to talk about it in general with a couple of specific mentions to things that I think people may have heard before. So the Parsha includes family situations. It includes marriage, it includes divorce, it includes unhappy husbands, it includes unhappy wives, It includes disobedient sons, but note that it does not talk about disobedient daughters. Just note that. It also talks about how to build a roof. So for those architects, you have to have a wall around it so nobody falls off. It also talks about how to treat your neighbor's lost objects, to include their animals, so you can't just leave them. You have to return them if you don't know who they belong to or they're too far away. You have to take them to your house and take care of them. There are also laws on sexual misconduct, and this is a parashah where you find the law about a man's obligation to marry his brother's wife if the brother dies without offspring. There are also laws about reaping your fields, about leaving overlooked olives and sheaves, and the neighbors are allowed to come into your field and eat grapes as long as they don't put any in a vessel to take away, and they can take grain as long as they don't use a sickle. But this is not the parashah that talks about not reaping the corners of your field to leave that for the poor. That's in Leviticus and not Deuteronomy. So, they're sort of sprinkled all over the place. One of the better known commandments is about shooing away the mother bird before you take the eggs or the fledglings. So should you come across a nest on your travels and you want either the eggs or the fledglings, you need to chase the mother bird away first before you do that. And it's usually interpreted as teaching about compassion, that you should be, if you should be that compassionate to a bird, then you should be that compassionate to your fellow human beings. But one commentator I read said, if this was really about compassion, you would have been told to leave the fledglings or the eggs as well. Then there are the laws regarding foreigners. So no Moabites or Ammonites were allowed to become part of the Israelite community, even to the 10th generation, because they did not meet the Israelites with food and water when they left Egypt. But it also says, thou shalt not abhor an Egyptian, for you were strangers in that land. And an Egyptian can become part of the Israelite community in the 3rd generation. And finally, the last commandment in this parashah is one probably everybody has heard at some point. It's to blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. And it seems like it would be easier to blot out the name if we weren't reminded about it every time we read this portion. And I'm going to end with a haiku that's on this subject. The haiku goes, remember, blot out, memory of Amalek, oxymoronic. Shabbat shalom. And we continue on page 282 with the Aleinu. Let all who are able please rise, and we are at the bottom of page 282.
Aleinu l'shaveach l'adon hakol l'atid gdula liotzer breshit shelo asanu kegoyei aratzo v'lo samanu k'mishpechot ha'adama shelo sam chelkeinu kahem v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam v'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim Lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu shehu notei shamayim v'yoser haaretz u'moshe v'karo b'shamayim mima'al u'shkinatuso v'gavhei meromi hu Eloheinu einon emet malkeinu efezulato Takatu b'torato Yadata yom V'ashevota elevata Ki Adonai hu Elohim V'ashamayim imal V'al haaretz Mitachat enod Ne'emar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz v'yom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shamo Ushamo, Ushamo Echad.
Please be seated, and we can continue with the Kaddish Tome, the Mourner's Kiddush, and we'll be on page 290. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch, a fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be, and oh, to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love what death has touched. And for those of you on YouTube, if you have a name to mention, you can add it to the chat box. Tonight we are remembering the following congregants: Jacob Ewens, J. Milton Jacobs, Benjamin Kimmel, David Morwitz, Melly Nathan, Meyer Pollock, Joseph Davis, Clara Raff, Herman Moss, Sarah Melnick, Hannah Wolf, Julia Brown, Samuel Klein, George Levin, Selma Lipsitz, Morris Radov, Samuel Umans, Henry Smith, Matilda Waxelbaum, Bertha Blackman, Sigmund Levy, S. Maxwell Flitter, Sol Coleman, Carolyn Falk Wolf, Eliezer Ehrlich, Hirsch Jacobs, and Amy Ellen Strauss. If anybody here has a name to add, please add it. And those who are able, please turn to page 294 and rise.
Anton Vidmar.
Sorry.
Yitkadal
Yitkadash Shmei
Rabba.
Yalma
Be'alma
Divrak
Divrak
Yurtei
Yurtei V'amlich
Malchutei.
Malchutei. V'chayechon u'v'yomechon. V'chayei dekol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala B'zman Karib V'meru. Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba
Mevarach Le'olam Olamei Amaya. Yitbarak V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitraman V'yitnaseh V'yithadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shemei D'Kudashah B'richu Le'elam Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tushbechata V'nechamata D'amiran Be'alma V'meru. Amen.
Yehi Shlama
Rabba Min Shemaya
V'chayim
Aleinu V'el Kol Yisrael V'meru. Amen. Say Shalom B'mramav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu V'el Kol Yisrael V'meru. Amen. And you may be seated, and I'll ask Rochelle Krowinski, our president, to please come and do the announcements.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And Julie, thank you very, very much. And Dennis, so much for assisting in the service tonight. And who knew? So daughters are never mentioned in this, right?
No.
So recalcitrant daughters, rise again, right? No. Services are in memory of Herman Moss and Herbert Bloomberg. Tomorrow, August 26th, Torah study at 9:30 via Zoom. And just to make sure, we have High Holy Days approaching very, very quickly. We've received many emails and mailings, etc. But if you have any questions, you can always call the office and ask Karen for more information, or go to our website. There's an enormous amount of information available under the worship tab. If you're registering or purchasing any of our fundraisers, and we have a number of fundraisers for the High Holy Days, dedications for prayer books this year, as well as we are purchasing or offering for purchase new Torah covers for the High Holy Days. And if you're interested, maybe your family would like to purchase a cover and dedicate it to loved ones and their memory, etc. So please contact the temple office, again, if you have any questions or need assistance. And Gesher News, it's that time of year. Time to get your children signed up for Gesher 23-24, hard to believe. School year. Contact Kendra if you have any questions, or you can contact them through Gesher at TAHERE.org, right? Any questions, anyone? That's a lot. Again, Shabbat Shalom on this cloudy night, but thank you so much for a wonderful service.
And we will continue with the closing song at the bottom of page 349. Eli, Eli. And when you get to the last line, which is about the crash of the heavens, then you can think about last night when we did have the crash of the heavens.
I don't know where you were, but in Cleveland, we had a Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and last night. So. Eli, Eli, shelo yegamer leolam, acho v'chayav, rishru shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tefilat adam, acho v'chayav, rishru shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tefilat adam. O God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart.
And we will continue with the blessing over the wine on page 5. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kadsho b'ahava u'ratzon hinchilanu, zikaron l'maaseh bereshit, ki hu yom techila l'mikra'e kodesh, zecher l'tziat mitzrayim, ki vanu v'acharta, v'yotanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, v'shabbat kadshecha, b'ahava uvratzon, hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mikadesh ha-shabbat.
Amen.
That's not the kindness.
Motzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Shabbat shalom. All right. It's a homemade one, so if anybody. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you to Dennis.